Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle, and I'm going to continue the Dragon Ball Z movie reviews with the first of the Super films. Now, there's a lot to say about this movie. The reason it came into play in 2013 when it was finally released, and by the way, I'm talking about the uncut version. I've never seen the cut version. This uncut version of Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods is actually an hour and like 45 minutes, and I hate that about it because it feels so long, mainly because it's closer to 30 minutes longer than most Dragon Ball Z movies, or Dragon Ball movies for that matter. Most of these were 45 minutes to maybe an hour. I think maybe 2 or 3 go closer to an hour and 10 minutes, and that's it. And usually that involved credits, which took off another, few minutes. So Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods was the continuation of number 1 Dragon Ball Z, and also simultaneously the beginning of what eventually, a couple of years later, would be called Dragon Ball Super, when it became a manga. You had Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, mortified in some ways by, I guess, what Dragon Ball GT kind of fumbled along with, and I like Dragon Ball GT a lot. Matter of fact, I would say quite a bit of it I love, because I grew up on it. I loved Z and I loved GT when I was growing up, as I've said in previous videos. But Akira was never a huge fan of that from what I understand, but despite what the fanboys will tell you, GT was canon at one point. There are magazines of Akira himself saying that, despite what people try to tell you otherwise. However, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods was not a reaction to Dragon Ball GT. It was basically a reaction from Akira Toriyama to Dragon Ball Evolution. Yeah, the Justin Chatwin, James Wong, James Marsters live-action film that was slated for a sequel not too long after it. I assume within a year or two after it, and it never happened, thank God. Even though I think I kind of morbidly would have wanted to see that. But Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, the uncut version, I saw it when it came out. I have the same DVD right here that I saw all those years ago. And I think my qualms are not restricted to just this film. Because of this movie, and I was excited for it, just like everybody else was. Evolution had come out in 2009. This was, 4 or 5 years later. I'm not good at math. So 4 or 5 years later, somewhere in there, this finally comes out. It had like a one-night release in a lot of the theaters around me. I didn't make it to see it. Got the DVD when it came out, went to see it finally, and after hearing everybody rave about it, I knew nothing about it going into it, aside from like a vague Chris Stuckman review or something like that. I watched it, and I fucking hated it. I thought it was so long, so boring, and yeah, the uncut version having 20 extra minutes in there, I'm sure that's part of the problem, and maybe one day I will talk about the cut version. I don't know if it's even available on DVD. I don't think it is in America, but, it's America. It probably is. This is such an overlong movie at an hour and 45-minute runtime for the uncut that I just don't think it's worth it most of the time. You have good things about this movie. I don't want to tell you that I wasn't excited to see Dragon Ball Z, or Dragon Ball in general, come back at that point. From this point on, was supposed to ignore in the series, before it even became Dragon Ball Super, it was supposed to ignore Dragon Ball GT. This was going to be its own thing, ignoring that, and doing something new. But a lot of us had questions. How would they address Super Saiyan 4? Would they make a precursor to that and eventually make GT part of what fans for some reason obsess over called canon? What were they going to do with that? But they said outright, Akira said outright, no, we're ignoring GT, we're going to do our own thing, and kind of continue like it's just a little bit of time after the Majin Buu saga. And I was cool with that. I was. And I still am. I will say this. I have to tell you up front, and this is kind of a spoiler for the next few videos, but maybe it's not, because I think I've seen this movie twice now, maybe 3 times now, as of this watch for this review series. The next films, Resurrection of F, Broly, the final one that recently came out a couple of years ago, Superhero, I've only seen once, because I was the most riotous, angry, anti-super fan out there, and this was the beginning of that, because this film felt off, and I couldn't tell until Resurrection of F came out whether it was Akira was rusty in his storytelling, because I don't think he was doing anything Dragon Ball-wise during the GT era, or anything. I don't know if he was even doing manga work anymore. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know what happened, but it felt like at first a thought that maybe the hinges of this door were a little rusty. But that wasn't what it was. It was a change in times. What I had not realized were how many things had changed in Japanese anime over these years. For example, when I was a kid, watching Dragon Ball Z in the 90s and then the 2000s on VHS tapes and clamshell VHSs and TV, those were hand-drawn animations from the 80s and then the early 90s. And I was seeing them in the late 90s, 2000s, right? Apparently anime changed so much, we started combining hand-drawn animation with CGI animation, and that's a little bit in this movie, and it's a little bit in Resurrection of F too, maybe a little bit more, and then Broly had a ton of it, where like entire backgrounds are just nothing but CGI bullshit. And then you have Superhero that's entirely CGI, which I don't know how you all feel about this, but before I even get to the plot of this film, I'm not a fan of mixing those two. They don't look good, and I just don't like it. I never have been a fan of that. I don't think mixing those two styles, hand-drawn and CGI animation, ever will work together, for me, at least for the human eye. The fluidity of one over the other, how one moves a little bit more clippy than the other, which is the hand-drawn, because it's hand-drawn. There are less frames per second, so on and so on. There's just something extra about it that I don't like, something off about it that really bothers me. It's just a nitpick. It's not going to bother most people, because obviously Battle of Gods was received very well. People loved it. Everybody I knew, even including my childhood friends that mainly one of them I really still keep in touch with all these years later, loved it and thought it was great. And I'm sitting here like, what the hell am I missing out on? Before this movie came out, I had rewatched all of the VHS tapes I had, bought the Z films that I had never seen, like, well, I saw Wrath of the Dragon a long time ago. I had never seen Dead Zone, Tree of Might, World's Strongest, and I watched all of those in prep in a big old marathon in excitement for this movie. And when it came out, again, I felt crushed. I felt betrayed. And I know it seems overdramatic, but it's true. As somebody who had waited around for so long, less time than the Japanese had been waiting around for new Dragon Ball content, this was a huge letdown. However, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because as I've said, I hated the Super films. From what I can say right now before I rewatch 2, 3, and 4, the next ones, I have actually last year, because of a friend of mine at work's recommendation, watched the Super show. And it was excellent. It was really, really excellent. Not perfect, but pretty great. And the things you hear about that show typically make you think it's not great, and I think a lot of those opinions are the opinions of people like myself who are basing it off of this movie and the next few movies because of how horrible they are and how overlong they are and boring and uneven, and the humor and whatever that they have. The mistakes, the flaws of them really corrupt what I was thinking Super was. I would get irritated just playing something like Dragon Ball FighterZ Z, or Fighters, however you pronounce that game's title, when I would see the love for Dragon Ball Super on there and the ignoring of things like Super Saiyan 4 and Dragon Ball GT, which is around. It doesn't matter what people think about canonicity. The fact is, it's in fucking Dragon Ball video games. It was in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, the God Lord Golden Idol of many fans out there. It was in Budokai 3, the God Lord Idol of people like myself in the fandom. So get over it. But what I would say is that I think at the end of the day, I'm sorry, I hit my mic. I would say that Super is probably better than DBGT, but I like the style, the hand-drawn animation, and everything about DBGT aside from the pacing issues and the rushing nature of a lot of that editing and storytelling compared to Super. But Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods is basically about this god named Beerus and his kind of companion, buddy, assistant named Whis. After Beerus wakes up, he's a cat god of destruction, whatever, and he goes, after he has this kind of prophetic dream about this thing called the Super Saiyan God, and he thought by now the Saiyans were completely extinct. He talks to Whis, his assistant. Well, I don't want to tell you too much about Whis in case you don't know, but it's pretty interesting stuff if you don't know much about Whis. I thought that was great stuff in later books and stuff. I've also been reading the manga. I've read the entire manga series so far, except for the newest release recently. Loved that too. The whole manga era of Super is better than the show, to be honest with you. But Beerus wakes up after this prophetic dream, and he decides to go looking around for this Super Saiyan God, and the first place he goes is to King Kai, not Supreme Kai. He goes to King Kai, talks to him and Goku after King Kai panics when Supreme Kai contacts him to let him know Beerus woke up. And King Kai at first is trying to hide Goku. Goku comes out, almost embarrasses himself, kind of does. And then they get drawn into a situation where Goku runs his mouth too much and almost gets killed by Beerus. But Beerus realizes from the get-go that he's not a Super Saiyan God. There is no Super Saiyan God key or anything like that floating around, I guess, in the atmosphere. Do they smell it? Do they just feel it? How does that work? Anyway, Beerus beats the shit out of Goku in like 2 hits and takes him down, which, you know, it was what it was. Then he goes to the Earth and ends up at Bulma's birthday party, which eventually Goku shows up to as well. Now, Vegeta is warned ahead of time as well that Beerus will be there with Whis, and that he is a god of destruction. They explain what Beerus is, and when Vegeta first realizes who he is, he kind of goes in panic mode because he remembers all those years ago, the ties between Beerus and Frieza, all of this interesting stuff. Beerus apparently is part of the extinction of the Saiyans to some extent, but it was mainly taken out by Frieza. But they knew that Frieza had been beaten, Whis tells Beerus this, by Goku, and that's one of the first reasons they go to meet Goku and King Kai. But anyway, they're at this party, Bulma's birthday party, and a lot of this movie is focused, and I'm not shitting you, it gets so repetitive and so boring to watch this. Despite the really pretty colors, this is a beautiful looking movie. Despite my irritations with the mixture of sometimes some 3D animation in with the 2D hand-drawn stuff. But it's a beautiful looking film, and that can keep you into it if you're into that stuff, if you admire things like that. It's a very, very Dragon Ball colorful movie, but it is almost entirely secluded to being at this fucking party and people playing party games, people like Hercule getting drunk and trying to pick fights with Beerus just because they're drunk, and Vegeta has to act so out of character, just like what people like myself complain about with the Dragon Ball Super TV show, anime, whatever, how Goku is so out of character there compared to what he was in Z, which is not too long before Super takes place. Vegeta in here acts like an absolute clown. He's singing, he's dancing, he's doing like these 80s running in place, that kind of shit, montage stuff, to try to appeal to Beerus to try to make him not lose his temper and destroy everything, because Beerus could do it in a snap of a finger, just like God can. So it's kind of like, this whole film is Vegeta being out of character and trying to appeal to Beerus to not kill everybody at a fucking birthday party. I don't know exactly what happened here. I don't know if a lot of the fans didn't pay attention or bother watching the movies when they were growing up, or if they were my age in the 90s and in the 2000s, getting into Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all of that. I don't know if they just ignored all of the movies and didn't care about that or what. I don't understand how the fans defend shit like this over something like Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan, or for that matter, Broly the Second Coming, which I think is better than this. That's not even a great movie, but it's better than this for me. Or even something like Dragon Ball GT, A Hero's Legacy, I think is way better than this. Hell, I'll tell you this much. I shocked my other Dragon Ball friend named Anthony the other day in a group chat on Facebook when I told him I think I enjoy, because of how bad it is, Dragon Ball Evolution more than Battle of Gods. Because at least there's some fun stuff in there that's stupid, in a very, very stupid, bad movie, but it made me have more fun than this did. This feels so, again, rusty in the Akira Toriyama trademark humor way. It just feels off all of the time to me. I can't place exactly why that is or what that is, but something is off the entirety of this movie for me. And I don't like it. I think it's a bad movie. I think it's a bad idea. And this is where things get really interesting. If you haven't seen Dragon Ball Super, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, I went ahead and republicized my old review that was on camera, not filmed like this with a picture on the screen and a microphone like I prefer. But if you want to watch my thoughts on Dragon Ball Super, the anime, I have that video up on my channel in case you want to check it out. And they actually take the first 2 films, this movie and Resurrection of F, which are technically Dragon Ball Z films. They're the final 2 Dragon Ball Z films when Wrath of the Dragon was forever ago, like 10 years ago or whatever. they actually take those first two movies for Dragon Ball Super's anime and expand them out. So instead of being like, an hour 45 minutes, hour and 25 minutes if you saw this in theaters or whatever, instead of having that, they expand them out to like 15 episodes, or even, I think one of them was like 20 episodes, something like that. And they expand them out in a way that they did it perfect. They explained things in a way that I think fit this series so much better. And I will agree, some of the animation that they put in place to draw things out from this movie for the anime, some of it looks bad. I will admit to that. It gets better as the anime goes on, Dragon Ball Super. But Battle of Gods, the animation is pretty good most of the time. The way the story is told here feels like it's a plot from the original movie stretched way too thin, with not enough happening there, with the whole party stuff. The party location is not an interesting place to have fights. It's just not. It's not that interesting. Beerus, I've never really been a hardcore fan of until I read the manga. Not even a hardcore fan of him now, but I like him more now than I ever did, and I like him in the anime a whole lot more than I ever did with the movies. Something about Beerus and Whis always got on my nerves, and by the way, I swear that Whis is played by the guy who is Mr. Creepypasta on YouTube. I've done the research, I swear to God it is him, and I swear Beerus is voiced by the guy, I think his name is Wayne Knight, who played Jack-O-Lantern on Billy and Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween episode. But it's not either of them, as far as I can tell. But they sound just like him, tell me they don't. So Battle of Gods, it's a mess. It's a total mess for me. Not even crazy about the music. Some of the songs are good for the soundtrack, some are not. Not crazy about it. They use mainly the Japanese stuff. They don't really use, like, the 90s clamshell VHS tapes I grew up on for Bardock the Father of Goku, Lord Slug. They're not playing Deftones. No, they're not playing Drowning Pool. They're not playing Disturbed. They're not playing Stupefy. They're not playing things like that in the background of the fights. And I think, frankly, it would have improved this, but probably not much. It's annoying. I think that's my biggest issue with Battle of Gods. At the end of the day, for me, it's annoying. And when I can sit here and tell you that I think I like Dragon Ball Evolution more than this movie, even as a hardcore fan of Super now, after seeing the anime last year, I just don't know what that means. I don't know what that means about me, about you, about this series. I don't know what that means. But for Akira Toriyama to come back making this, maybe when I was a kid I would have liked this movie more, but it meanders so much focused around this party and this juggling act Vegeta's doing. I just don't like that. I find nothing about that interesting or entertaining for that matter. And I think Battle of Gods is overall kind of a mistake. I think what Super does with it, when it expands it out a little bit, gives it time to breathe, does better jokes, better drama, all of that stuff worked so much better in the Super remake of this movie, in my opinion. Now, I guess with that, I don't really have much more to say after almost a 20-minute long review. One thing I do want to cover is, of course, this was the intro of a thing that's kind of a spoiler if you haven't seen it, but everybody who's watching this video knows what it is. Super Saiyan God and God Ki. Now, they have this urban legend that Goku is told to Goku by Shenron when they bring him out with the Dragon Balls. And Shenron talks about a group of good-hearted Saiyans once upon a time that created the Super Saiyan God, not created it, but summoned it by having 5 Saiyans stand around one Saiyan and kind of put their Saiyan, Super Saiyan, whatever powers into this person in almost a ritualistic sense, and Goku has to do that at one point with all of the gang, the Saiyans that are around, and when this movie came out, not before I watched Super last year, because that really cleared this up and made it better, I hated and still kind of hate the look of Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Blue. I hate that shit. Ultra Instinct and whatever later on is not so bad. Things like Beast Gohan are pretty cool. Not so much in the movie, but I like the look of it. in the superhero film, I guess you could say. But Super Saiyan God, I just don't like. I think this stuff sucks. And I understand that Toriyama was kind of in a place where he had to work away from Super Saiyan 4. And you couldn't just keep making a list of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like you had on fandom sites and stuff and art when I was a kid. You couldn't do the whole Dragon Ball AF thing that Toyotaru, the current manga artist and the current beholder of the franchise now that poor Akira Toriyama's gone. Toyotaru I'm a huge fan of. And he used to do the whole Dragon Ball AF thing, if I remember correctly, the legend says. So he had some good ideas, but you couldn't just keep going on and making everybody a Super Saiyan 4 or 6 all the way up to 10. You couldn't keep doing that. Toriyama had to do something new. What I hate is the fact that instead of coming up with a new hairstyle or a new form or something to not confuse it with Super Saiyan 4, which in this timeline, like I said, doesn't exist, instead of doing all of that, he had to basically say, okay, we're going to have Goku basically go back to regular form, but now he has red hair. Really pink hair in this movie, and kind of in the Super Anime show too. He has pink hair now. And he has big old pupils. It looks like he's been doing drugs. You know, with pink irises and shit. I just don't like it. I think the Super Saiyan God thing looks bad. I just don't like it. And I think Super Saiyan Blue could have been the form they could have used here, because literally from Resurrection of F onward, they barely ever use Super Saiyan God. Vegeta barely uses it. Goku very barely uses it. But Super Saiyan Blue, in my opinion, should have been the transformation here, and I think people like myself would have accepted it a lot more, instead of it just having be another base form of Goku, but a very strong one, that, as the Super Anime explains, makes him look younger. Never realized that in this movie, but, you know, it is what it is. I don't like the fact that when they go Super Saiyan God, whether it be Goku here or Vegeta and Goku in future movies, they have like a CGI aura around them instead of a hand-drawn. It looks like shit when you get that. I don't like that at all. I hate that when Goku goes Super Saiyan God in this movie and gets that aura in the CGI 3D animation. It looks bad, dude. With all that being said, though, I have constant complaints about this film. I could talk about it all day. I'm not going to subject you to that. I'm going to end this under 25 minutes. Sorry to ramble on for this video and the previous video, Dragon Ball Evolutions review. But I had a lot to say about this. I had my precursor stuff. I had my things I needed to get off my chest about this, Dragon Ball GT, so on and so on. So the next few videos for the next few movies should not be as rambly and tangent-filled. I just don't think this movie's right. I think Goku is out of line sometimes as a character. He's not completely off the path like the anime, but Vegeta really is. It just doesn't fit. This show, this movie, this particular film, Battle of Gods, just doesn't fit into Dragon Ball Z for me. I just think there's something off about it. Again, I don't know if it's a rusty hinge situation, like I said. I suspect that's quite a part of it, because Akira Toriyama was pretty involved with this movie. But I just think it's bad. Again, I don't know if it's the uncut version versus the theatrical cut, but it feels like it's everything. It feels like even the theatrical cut I probably wouldn't like either. I'm willing to try it, but I don't think I'm going to like it anymore. Anyway, what do you think about Battle of Gods? Did you love it 10 years ago? Yeah, 10 years ago when this movie came out. Did you think it was great? Did you think it was amazing? Not me. Not me. On the almost 11th anniversary of this release, I still think it's rough. The returning cast members were great. I really loved having everybody here. Gohan, once again, is made a fucking fool out of, especially in the Super Anime and stuff. Probably worse than he was in GT, matter of fact. Because at least in GT, you had Gohan and Goten fight at one point in a pretty cool Super Saiyan way. It was quick, and that kind of sucked, but still. Where GT felt like fan fiction, this felt like shitty fan fiction. You know? So anyway, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. Let me know your thoughts about it down in the comments section down below. What do you prefer? This version of this story, or the one that the Super Anime or the manga or whatever did too? I'd love to hear all of that down below too. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Hopefully, I'll enjoy the next few films more as I rewatch them for these reviews, but we'll get around to that soon. Thank you all for watching, guys, once again. God bless you all once again, and goodbye.